Binary gender. Everything is either dumb as a rock or a 16-ounce at Starbucks. Grande. This whole thing is broken. Because are you telling me that Robert Pattinson, Samuel L. Jackson, and Daddy Pascal are all rocks, while Natasha Lyonne, Jennifer Coolidge, and Timothée Chalamet are all women? So if not binaries, then what? Allow me to introduce to you the comprehensive utility of non-binary taxonomies, aka cunt.
Oh my god!
Pros of cunt. All-inclusive, overpowered, hyper-specific. Cons of cunt. None. Let's begin. The binary. 2 boy-girl categories. It's got harmful assumptions, lacks imagination, no nuance, and no cunt, tragically. So, the solution to this is having gender as a spectrum. This creates some space for androgyny. The scientific center point of the spectrum, everyone say it together now, Jonathan Van Ness.
Chalamet is clearly closer to being Pretty Princess.
So, the spectrum. Let's do an in-depth analysis of why this is good and why this is bad. Why this is good. It's objectively cuntier. Why this is bad. It's not good enough. Let's place the genders in the spectrum. Starting with this one. Where does it go? B, C, D, E, or F. That's right, it goes in E.
Got it.
This one, where does it go? That's right, D.
D. Okay.
Holy shit, y'all are good at this. C. This one. F. Yes, you
Yeah.
got it, yeah! And this one.
I'm guessing B.
Yes! Y'all are so smart! Okay, does this look right to you, though? Take a look. Is this a smooth gradient from one to the other?
No.
No,
No.
you need a third axis.
You do. We need a solution, which is in another fucking dimension. So what we have here, and I'm going to explain this to you. We have masculinity and femininity here on the left and right hand sides. That's your normies. We have androgyny somewhere in the middle. We have hypergender up here, which is femininity to the extreme, masculinity to the extreme, androgyny to the extreme. And as you go to the genderless dimension, notice how this is neither blue nor pink on the bars here on the bottom. That's because it escapes masculinity and femininity as you are going more and more south.
So why is hypergender pure white all the way across the top?
To be fair, I feel like we could also be talking about the bars on the side of the words.
So you can
Got it.
have hyper
Sure.
masculinity, which is why it's the blue bar, but genderless on the masculinity side is the same as genderless on the femininity side because it is pure genderlessness.
Got it.
There's no masculinity or femininity or androgyny or anything. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
So let's look at hypergender first.
Okay.
This is what hypergender looks like. It pushes traditional masculinity and femininity to its very edges, nearly to the breaking point. It's edgy, icons, inspirational, and asks, how are they so incredibly on point? And they all live here on the top. And you can see here that we also have a gradient from masculinity to androgyny to femininity up here. Now, let's look at genderlessness. Sneakily rejects gender, formless, void, shadow, essence of humanity, and it asks, what are they? And if you're all the way here on the bottom, it's just genderlessness in general. But it does fade into masculinity and fade into femininity. And then here in the middle, this is your normies. You have just regular masculinity, regular androgyny, and regular femininity.
Okay.
Just your stock phototype people. But there's more, because that doesn't encapsulate everybody. Because we have magical genders. Magical genders are how dogs smell, how bees see colors, and how belugas echolocate. It
Tag
is...
yourself.
What?
Tag yourself.
Yes. This is gender beyond our senses. And this is what they look like.
Ooh.
Loudly rejects masculinity and femininity, embraces pure energy, life, power, bold, cunning, risky, alluring, intense, artistic, and maybe even human, but we're still not entirely sure. It asks, what the fuck is that, and can I try? So this is where they go, right up here on top. I just had to slot them in somewhere, but I want you to notice that the bars on here are yellow. They also reject femininity and masculinity in the same way genderlessness does. And that's so as you're going from hypergender up to magical gender, you're losing your sense of masculinity and femininity. So it's time for a pop quiz. Go ahead and place this gender on the map. Point to where you think it goes. It goes right here. Woo! Hell yeah, who got it right? Yes! I want you to notice femininity energy, so it is on the feminine side. However, this is overall just essence of balloon, which is not really a gender as we typically understand it, which is why it's very much creeping into magical gender territory. Second one. Where does this go? Everybody point. I think this is just pure, absolute magical energy. Because what even is this? I don't know how to categorize it at all.
Looks like they're wearing hats on their legs.
Exactly.
Oh, see, I was gonna say weird mushrooms.
Oh, that's awesome.
I saw mushrooms as well. Last one. Correctly place this gender on the map. Everybody, lock in your answers. I think it's down here. Who got it? Yeah?
A little bit lower than that.
A little bit lower than that? That's totally fair. It's very genderless because there is just this general vibe of formlessness, but there's a good amount of androgyny here. I think there's some rootedness in masculinity, but it is very much in the androgyny area. Okay, so where are you? Everybody point to where you are. I think there's still more to this story. Because what about code switching and change over time and the trans experience of gender and gender fluidity as well and gender dysphoria? How do you represent all of this in the world of gender? We need a system that can encapsulate it, and I think we have one. But we just need more markers. So we have been talking about this green X, and this is the ideal gender performed. We also have our actual gender performed. You can have your ideal and your actual genders now line up. You also have the range of gender you would ideally like to inhabit because it might change a little bit day to day, and your actual gender range, what you're capable of performing. And this is a personal example of how I believe my graph looks. You'll notice that I can perform all of this gender if I so choose, but all I really want to perform is over here in this area here. And my ideal gender is like maybe a little bit north of, normie femininity into hypergender. But my actual performed gender, I think, maybe is a little bit closer to androgyny, but it's pretty damn close. Now, this is also where dysphoria comes in. So the distance between your actual and ideal performed genders, that distance is your performance dysphoria in that moment. And we also have this area between your actual available genders that you can perform and the ideal genders you would like to perform, and that area is your generalized dysphoria. Now, as a trans person is existing here.
That's cool. I'm sorry. I just
Thank
really
you.
like this animation.
Why, thank you. I put some time into it.
I was gonna say.
This, you'll see at the very beginning, is very overwhelmed with generalized dysphoria, and then as the transition goes along, we're pushing that back into present day. Let me walk you through each one of these stages. So this is the very first frame of my dysphoria journey here, my gender journey. You'll see that I'm locked over here in this very masculine frame, and I did not like it, and I was just desiring literally any other gender except for what I had access to. Always out of reach. Then I started exploring my gender. I pushed a lot of this back, but it's still looming. And I started performing into the hypergender, kind of maybe bordering on magical, but never really quite there, but very kind of firmly in the zone of androgyny as well. And then I felt like I wanted to explore femininity a little bit more than I had been before, but I was afraid to embrace femininity entirely. So I sank into the genderlessness void a little bit, still hinting on femininity, and noticing too that generalized dysphoria is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. Then, this is where I feel like I'm at today. You can see that now there's significantly amount of overlap between my ideal and actual performed genders, and there's still some generalized dysphoria, but if I needed to, I could totally perform my ideal gender. But I don't feel the need to do that all of the time because I am very comfortable in my little zone that I've created for myself. Okay, let's talk about the experience of gender fluidity. This is not something I have, but this is something that I think we can represent on my graph. So, gender fluidity. I think this is a graph of what somebody might have after they have explored their gender fully, where they have been able to perform a large amount of gender. And then they have their ideal, also encapsulating a lot of this. And day to day, or week to week, or month to month, or hour to hour, their gender kind of shifts and changes over time. And they can find themselves in different spots on this graph and match their ideal and actual performed genders. So are we done yet? And I don't think we are. Because we've been talking about gender expression this entire time. Right? And that's a really important part of gender. But there's so much more to gender. Think about, like, your body. That is physically, like, there's dysphoria that lives here, and there's a lot of your gender that has to do physically with your body. If you're getting top surgery and your nipples not grafted back on, that is not masculine nor feminine. That is something else. You need the entire graft to be able to represent your entire body. But that has nothing to do with, like, the clothes and your voice and stuff. So it's a separate dimension. We also have social performance. You can imagine Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson prancing in here, right? Like, that's weird because that's not a social performance that matches his physical aesthetic. And also, your societal role. Are you a plant dad? Are you a mom? Are you a parent? Are you a bread earner? These are very gendered terms that you show up in society that you can also add to your gender as how all this fits.
The gender of bread.
The gender of bread.
Gender bread.
Exactly. You understand the wavelength I'm trying to get to
I
today.
think I read that.
So are we done now? And I still don't think we are. I think we need a third dimension. Let me introduce you to the planetary vision of gender. So on the bottom here we have the masculine pole, on the top here we have the feminine pole, and here we have the androgyny equator. As you dig deeper, you find the genderless core, and the atmosphere out here is the hypergender atmosphere. And then as you're going out and you escape the atmosphere, you enter the magical universe. And you'll notice that all of this exists in the magical universe, right? We are a part of the universe. Masculinity and femininity are a form of magic. It is not the only magic, though. That's something that we forget since we are living on this gender planet, and that's all we live and breathe in this society. But really, this is just one experience of gender. There can be any number of planets with a bunch of different versions of what these poles might look like. But we also talked about them a number of dimensions. So we need to make sure that this model is a multi-dimensional universe that exists on all the different aspects of gender, the performance, the societal, the body, everything. In conclusion, I want you to be yourself, because your cuntiest self belongs here. Thank you, but I'm not done.
That was shorter than I thought it was going to be. Oh my goodness, this is amazing.
I want to talk about some nuances. So goth. You might think, well, that's got to do something with gender, but that's actually a layer on top of gender. Because you can have a very masculine goth, a very feminine goth, a very magical goth, a very formless, genderless goth, and a very androgynous goth. This is a style, not a gender. There is a distinction between these.
Are you sure it's not just a flavor of magical gender?
It very well could be, because everything exists in the magical universe. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
I mean, there's magical gothic right down there.
There is magical gothic. It does exist. But I do think that it can exist everywhere. And speaking of existing everywhere, gender across cultures.
Oh, yeah.
Because this entire presentation, I was just giving you the Western perspective. You know, that mushroom sombrero guy?
Yeah.
That might be a culture here on Earth, their epitome of femininity. But we don't really know, because that's not really my culture. I'm not there to witness it. You can kind of look and see all the different versions of masculinity and all the different versions of femininity and find the similarities between the two. This is very subjective, even on our one little tiny rock. But this model of gender can work in whatever culture. You just need to embrace their styles of that culture, your norms of that culture, using the same cunty model. And now I am actually done, and I will take questions.
Wow, that was so good.
Thank you. Thank you.